love it because in the last 3 drafts, the Houston Texans have had 3 top 3 picks, and they've gone quarterback, edge, corner. And they're the 3 sort of founding stones you need, as well as like a tackle and now a receiver, I'd say, with the way the league's going, to build a franchise. You know, they've got the best receiver in this draft class in Jackson Smith-Njigba, and you've got Devon Witherspoon, the best corner in this draft class, adding to a team that already made the playoffs last year. You know, they're just a quarterback away now from actually making a challenge. But for me, this first round might have actually sent Harry Roseman into a stress-induced coma, just because, you know, they've taken an off-ball linebacker and a running back in the first round of a draft in 2023. So hello and welcome back to the SJMoores Podcast, and today, wow, let's talk about the 2023 NFL Draft first round, because what a night it was last night. I mean, I didn't go to bed till about 5:30. I woke up about 11. I'm knackered. But no, just had to get some content out for the draft because really a lot of storylines happened last night that really weren't expecting to. Like, you know, obviously we had the 2 running backs being drafted in the top 12 of the draft. You know, after in recent years, running backs falling out of the first round, and obviously it's been a very, you know, devalued position because you can get the value in the 5th round. We've seen with the like San Francisco and New England have been doing for years now. You can just pick up a running back from anywhere, play him in, and you can be a bit part player, get 500 yards, and you know have 3 or 4 of them rather than having one 1,500 yard running back who plays every down. And you know that's what the way teams are being built. But no, the Atlanta Falcons and the Detroit Lions went against that theory, drafting B. John Robinson at 8. Even though the Falcons did have Cordero Patterson and Tyler Algier in their backfield, which raises a question as to what the hell they're going to do with Cordero Patterson. Maybe he could be moved on day 2 of the draft today. And then also Jahmyr Gibbs going at 12 to the Lions, which I'll get into later because they are in the next segment of this podcast, as well as reacting to the draft. I'm also going to do the winners and losers of this draft first round tonight. And the Lions are in that section. But you know, 2 running backs going in the top 12. Jahmyr Gibbs sort of drafted quite a lot higher than any people thought he would go. A lot of people thought Gibbs was like a late first round pick, sort of like going from the Chargers at 21 onwards. He could, I don't think he'd make past the Bengals at 28 potentially, but that's where people thought Gibbs would go. But now he ended up going at 12 to the Lions. We also saw Lamar Jackson before the draft even started last night get a new contract, which we'll get into as well. And Lamar must be feeling happy today because you know the Ravens paid him. They gave him another weapon in Zay Flowers. And yeah, what a day to be Lamar Jackson. Anthony Richardson ended up going up to the Colts at number 4, which, I mean, that was a shocker for me because I was certain they were going to take Will Levis at 4. But for me, the Colts took the right quarterback. Just, I wish they had the same sort of situation that, you know, his next few landing spots of Detroit and the Raiders, or even Seattle had, where you have a Jimmy Garoppolo, a Jared Goff, a Geno Smith that he can sit behind, rather than, you know, a Gardner Minshew who he could potentially beat out. I mean, I like Gardner Minshew as a player, and maybe he does start a whole year. But if something goes wrong for the Colts, you know, midway through the season, there will be pressure to put Richardson in the lineup. And I'm not so sure that's a good idea personally, but we'll see. Obviously, Bryce Young, you know, I left it till quite late in this sort of roundup section because, you know, we knew Bryce Young was going to go number 1 overall. He's a lot of people's best players in this draft, up there with Jalen Carter and Will Anderson. And obviously quarterback, the Panthers traded up to 1 with the Bears to get a quarterback. They obviously were going to get a quarterback. And for many weeks now, it has been Bryce Young, their man. And ultimately, there are the size concerns, but he is the best quarterback in this draft class for me. I think he's, you know, his legs are actually his best strength. You know, he's sort of got like a Patrick Mahomes movement where he can just move around the pocket and make plays like a point guard style QB. Like your Mahomes is, your Josh Allen to an extent, although he is massive too. But the sort of Kyler Murray as well, like a playmaking, move around the pocket, and sort of Russell Wilson, another example, just drop in passes and all angles. Like Bryce Young can do that, and his arm's okay. It's above average. He's not got the arm that say Anthony Richardson or Will Levis or Hendon Hooker have in this draft class, but he does have an acceptable arm to make all the throws at the NFL level. And for me, Bryce Young, I hope he's going to have a great career. And he goes into a situation in Carolina as well where they've got a stacked roster now that they should win the NFC South. They should be in the playoffs. In fact, it's like they should be, because they got a chance to compete. The NFC is really weak compared to the AFC as well. Like, this team could be a playoff team, and that'd be a great first year for Bryce Young to have. And then the last one, which I'll get into later because he is also in the winners and losers segment. A kind of spoiler alert, we know which side he's going to be on. But Will Levis, who has fallen out of the first round after obviously initially being mocked to like the Colts at 4, maybe even the Texans at 2. Like him and Tyree Wilson were the betting favourite to go at 2 at the start of the day, I believe, or something like that. He was meant to go really high in the draft. But the Colts obviously went for Richardson. And I am not a fan of Will Levis that much anyway, so I can see why. I think they made the right decision. But for me, he just it's one of those. It's going to go down as one of those sort of like draft night falls. The sort of Brady Quinn, Johnny Manziel, Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers style falls. But obviously, either you fall out the first round, you fall to very late in the first round. One of those two, and ultimately, basically every team at the top of the second round are going to be trying to trade up for Will Levis now, because he's not, I like him, but I don't think there's that much between him and Hendon Hooker. If you're going to draft Will Levis, yes, Hendon Hooker's old and he's only played in the spread offense at Tennessee, but they both have the tools, and Will Levis had not a great year last year anyway for Kentucky. So they're interchangeable, and the two of them will go at the top of the second round tonight. But who goes where, we don't know. I've got some fits from later what to talk about. But, Will Levis falling out the first round was a bit of a shock, especially Tampa Bay passing on him at 19, and the Saints too, and the Vikings. Loads of fits that could have, Will Levis could have gone to, he could have gone to, passing on him, and another classic draft day full. But that's pretty much the main storylines and the takeaways from the first round of the draft. What a night it was, like I said, and tonight as well for day 2, round 2 and 3, it'll be the same because there's so many good players left on the board. But let's get into just sort of my winners and losers of the night, because some teams are a lot better. Some teams, every team gets better. That's the whole point of the draft. But some teams, in my opinion, have made massive jumps as to where they were, 48 hours ago. So without further ado, let's get into my first winner, which it's a person, not a team, but you could say Lamar Jackson and the Ravens here. Lamar Jackson is my first winner for the 2023 first round draft. And what a 24 hours for Lamar Jackson. He's finally got his new long-term deal in Baltimore, and on top of getting another weapon in Zay Flowers as well, and he became the new highest paid QB with a 5-year, $260 million extension with $185 million guaranteed, second to only Jalen Hurts. Which I think Baltimore got their way there. They didn't want to make Lamar the highest paid guaranteed quarterback. Obviously, like Deshaun Watson is another level. Which the fact that Browns even did that Deshaun Watson contract is just beyond me. But no, anyway, the Ravens basically they got an acceptable contract for both them and Lamar. The Jalen Hurts negotiation last week has obviously helped them find a level for him. Because similar style QBs, they've both had sort of MVP style breakout seasons over the years. Obviously, Jalen last year, Lamar in 2019, that's the sort of benchmark of where Lamar could get paid, and he gets just less guaranteed than Hurts, but he is the highest paid quarterback in the NFL at this moment in time. Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert have got extensions coming, and those guys will set the new bar, I believe. As for Zay Flowers, I think that's a great pick for Baltimore. You've already added Odell Beckham Jr. to that receiver core for Lamar, so you've given him a contract. You've got OBJ coming off an injury, but missed the entirety of last year. So if he comes back healthy, then he's great. You obviously got Rashad Bateman, who was Lamar's obviously other than Mark Andrews, best target, and I really like Rashad Bateman as the receiver too. And then now you've got Zay Flowers as sort of chase of pace, get guy in the slot who can get open, and he was one of my favourite receivers in this draft class. I've been going to Seattle at 20, obviously not expecting JSN to fall, but I love what the Ravens done in the last 24 hours because they've committed to Lamar. They've not given him too much. They've not given him the Deshaun Watson level contract, and they've given him another weapon with this new offense with Todd Monken. There's no more Greg Roman. They've gone. It's very interesting to see how this goes, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it. So yeah, let's see. Let's see what happens with the Ravens, and I mean ultimately, they had a great day. I got another winner here before I got into some losers, and that's the Houston Texans. I didn't mention them in the headlines, but they really, really stole the show last night too. Taking CJ Stroud at number 2 after all the smoke, all the smoke of, we're going to draft a defensive player at 2, trying to tempt people to come up in the draft. But instead, they were planning their own little trade up. So he took CJ Stroud at 2. I like him. He's a scheme fit as well because he's a sort of stay in the pocket. He can move. He's got legs. We saw that in the Georgia game, in the national championship game, in the playoffs. But yeah, for me, the playoffs. For me, you got scheme fit. He's a very accurate QB, which the San Francisco system that he's going into with obviously with Bobby Slowicki, and you've got you've got D'Amico Ryans as your head coach there. He is going into that system. He's an accurate QB and a sort of that's his main strength. Things like Tua Tagovailoa, Jimmy Garoppolo, to an extent, Brock Purdy, like Nick Mullins. That's their mold of QB. The QBs that fit that offense. CJ Stroud actually, I think he'll be a great success in Houston. And then obviously, as I mentioned, trading up to 3 with the Arizona Cardinals to get Will Anderson. I love it because in the last 3 drafts, the Houston Texans have had 3 top 3 picks, and they've gone quarterback, edge, corner. And they're the 3 sort of founding stones you need, as well as like a tackle and now a receiver, I'd say, with the way the league's going, to build a franchise from the bottom ready, which they were after the Deshaun Watson trade. So they've now got a corner in Derek Stingley, who they drafted last year. You've got Will Anderson off the edge, who is, I think, is most ready to play in the league edge in this class by, for sure. He's sort of more in the Aiden Hutchinson, Joey Bosa, Nick Bosa mould than someone like Trevon Walker from last year, or your Khalil Max or Chandler Jones is that sort of athletic end that you've seen in previous drafts. But Will Anderson will be able to come in and make plays for Houston straight away with Grenard on the other end. And giving up one of their 2 first round picks for next year as well, obviously with the Deshaun Watson trade. So you've still got a first next year. I love it because you've now got your edge, you've got your quarterback, you've got your corner, and you can really start to build a franchise now in Houston. Next up for them will probably be a receiver next year if there's someone there they can take, or maybe even make a trade for a receiver. But they're really building something in quite a weak AFC South. It's the Houston Texans for me are a massive winner from the 2023 NFL Draft first round last night. As for losers, after such a good, aggressive draft last year, for me, the Detroit Lions, they weren't as successful last night. They worked the phones like they did last year, making trades. But for me, this first round might have actually sent Harry Roseman into a stress-induced coma, just because they've taken an off-ball linebacker and a running back in the first round of a draft in 2023. The players are good players. I had them sort of as like a back of the first round, start of the second round players, and they've drafted them at 12 and was 18. But if the Lions believe they can be a success, then fair play. But I just think they could have got a way better value with the picks. So I've picked them as a loser. Like, I mean, I like the trade down. Obviously, if they weren't confident with Jalen Carter's off the field and obviously like sort of weight issues as well, then there's no problem taking him. And Jahmyr Gibbs, like I said, he was a shocker at 12, but if you can get him to play like we think Bijan Robinson's going to play, then it may be worth it. But for me, I feel like they could have got better value with their picks. So for me, yeah, unfortunately, the Lions are a loser of this draft. As for the next winner, I've gone for the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, Philly are so good that they can afford to take risks. Drafting ahead of need years down the line now. They're Jalen Carter fall to them at 9 after trading up with the Bears one spot just to get him, just to secure him there for them. And I mean, look, Jalen Carter has landed in a great organisation. If anyone can sort him out and help him become the great player that he's destined to be, it's gonna be the Philadelphia Eagles. You've now got Fletcher Cox, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter and Milton Williams all in one interior D-line room. What the hell? That is one elite group right there. And when they go for another championship run this year, if Jalen Carter can come in right away and be the player he was at Georgia, then he absolutely could put them over the top and win them a Super Bowl. And then at the back of the first, they go and get Nolan Smith, who is an athlete. He's a bit of a smaller edge rusher, don't get me wrong. He does need to put on a little bit of weight. But if he can become the guy that Daniel Jeremiah comped him to last night in Hassan Reddick, who obviously will line up opposite him at some point when he gets in the edge rotation for the Eagles, then man, the Eagles again have got a steal at the back of the first round. They won't rely on him straight away, like I was saying, because you've already got Hassan Reddick, Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat, all as special edge rushers there who have produced many sacks over the years, especially Reddick last season. But if you can get him in there to complement those guys and then eventually become a pass rusher next to Reddick, who obviously you've committed to long term, once Brandon Graham and say Josh Sweat go into free agency, then you've got a great piece there to have for your defensive line, and it's just rolling through. Now with the Eagles, the last couple of years, they're just rotating through D linemen and O linemen, and they have got such a success at it that you've just got to applaud Harry Roseman. Like genuinely, it is amazing how they've built such a talented roster from a team that was clearly rebuilding 2 or 3 years ago to probably going to 2 NFC Championship games in a row. I'd say you've got to applaud him. As for losers, my next one are the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, for me, it was quite hard to pick a loser. Probably pick 3 losers as I did today, because a lot of teams did really either go best player available to help their team or fill a need. And I mean, the Chargers did fill a need, but and clearly they have a type at receiver. Big 6'1", 2 plus receivers who can win at the catch point. And that's Mike Williams' mold. That is their mold of receiver. You can tell that now. But for me, I thought they'd go for a change of pace type of guy. Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison were both there on the board for them, but instead they went for Quentin Johnston, who's more of the Mike Williams, Josh Palmer mold for them. And I mean, if they're going for a big receiver, I'm surprised they didn't go for Dalton Kincaid or Michael Mayer, to be honest with you, because those guys are some of the best players in this draft class, in my opinion. I've done extended work on the tight ends. I did a piece for the Dolphins. I watched every single tight end in this class, just going through who I liked for the Dolphins to take, because obviously they've got a huge need at tight end. And Kincaid for his receiving ability, but especially Mayer, he really impressed me. So I'm surprised he fell out the first one at all completely. But what the Chargers have essentially done is they've drafted a Mike Williams replacement for when he leaves for free agency in a year or two's time, rather than getting better for Justin Herbert. And I don't really you could have gone for a change of pace guy on a cheap contract and then given Williams a 1 or 2 year deal, and then really given Herbert something to work with over these years, over the next couple of years, before his cap hit really takes effect for your roster. Tom Telesco's done a lot of good things for the Chargers, but I don't agree with his pick last night personally. As for the next winner, it's got to be the Seattle Seahawks, right? Seattle surprised so many people going for Devon Witherspoon at 5 last night, but for me, I love it because you've now got a corner duo to improve an already sort of sneaky good defense. Obviously, Tariq Woolen had a great rookie year last year. One of the best rookie seasons, and obviously he wasn't like a day one, day two pick or anything like that. He came out of nowhere, and it was obviously up for defensive rookie of the year, everything. So that was what a year for him. And obviously, the team have got Bo Wagner back. If they can get anything out of Jamal Adams, then I mean, fair play. They could come back up in the first round and get Brian Branch and add to that DB room as well as Quandre Diggs. That you like that. The Seahawks can build such a good defense, and they've not really put many resources into it either. It's like this is the first big defensive piece that they've added in a long time. Obviously, other than the Jamal Adams trade in 2019. But the other thing as well is Pete Carroll did what many people, and John Schneider obviously did what many people expected him to do, rather than the typical Seattle John Schneider mould of let's go draft LJ Collier in the first round or Rashad Penny out of nowhere. That's because they had two great picks. They got the best receiver in this draft class in Jackson Smith-Njigba, and you got Devon Witherspoon, the best corner in this draft class, adding to a team that already made the playoffs last year. They're just a quarterback away now from actually making a challenge. And again, I love the Jackson Smith-Njigba pick because I had an inkling to go receiver in the mock I did with Charlie Grace last week. I had him taken Flowers at 20, but there's uncertainty of how long Tyler Lockett and especially DJ Metcalf as well. Obviously, he's betting the contract. How long they're going to be there for in Seattle. So you've got a guy now who for a year you got 3 options for Geno Smith, and maybe if you bring Lockett back another year and you pay Metcalf, then you've got immense amount of weapons for their new quarterback after Geno Smith, whoever it may be. They could go down the veteran route if they're that good next season that they can't go up and get Caleb Williams or Drake May. But for me, I loved Seattle's strategy last night, and for me, honestly, it's one of the best draft classes they've had in a very long time. And you've got someone to complement Metcalf and Lockett before Tyler Lockett leaves, and potentially Metcalf too. And it's a great draft from Schneider and Pete Carroll. Love it. And then my last loser, it's got to be Will Levis, right? Levis had a draft night to forget, unfortunately. Just be real, falling out of the first one entirely. I mean, I didn't like what I saw when I watched him. I thought some teams might fall into love with his upside. I even said in the podcast that I wouldn't be surprised if he went number 1 overall when just before the combine, because he's got a great arm, but there's just something wrong when you watch him, and for me, I just don't like it as a first round quarterback. But ultimately, I didn't expect to fall at the first round. I thought someone would fall in love with him, and as soon as Tampa Bay and the Vikings passed on him, you're like, shit, something might go down here. He might, he might not get drafted. Or maybe someone could have come up and grabbed a 5th-year option like the Ravens did in Ozzie Newsome's last draft for Lamar Jackson, but no, just fell out. And I mean, there are many potential landing spots for him. Detroit again at 34. You got the Rams at 36. Obviously, there's uncertainty over Matt Stafford, especially after the injury last year. You got Seattle at 37. Obviously, getting the quarterback to develop whilst Geno Smith's there. I mean, genuinely, they could have taken him at 6. If you get Will Levis on top of JSN and Devon Witherspoon, that's a great job for Seattle, because you can afford to take a risk with that pick. You can afford to take a risk with a pick, because you've done so well already. It looks like you've got 2 great pieces already to come in and play day one on your team. Receiver and corner, number 1 in the class at both positions. Seattle at 37 would make sense. The Raiders at 38, obviously, again, they passed on him, taking Tyree Wilson at number 7. The Saints at 40, obviously, they passed on him, taking Brian Brisee at 29. The Titans at 41. We thought the Titans would fall in love. Well, I say we. Like, I went to a draft party last night, and we all thought the Titans would take Will Levis because it's the kind of player that they'd fall in love with, especially the Colts as well. Like the Will Levis was typical Colts, but they went against them old, drafted Anthony Richardson, and I love that. I really love that from the Colts because ultimately what they liked over the years, what Chris Ballard has liked, hasn't worked. So I think it was time to make a change as to what they require at quarterback. But so Tennessee at 41 is a great spot. Atlanta at 44, New England at 46, Washington at 47, and then Detroit again at 48 if they don't take him at 34. If he doesn't make, obviously a team could trade up for him as well, but if he doesn't make it past 48, Will Levis, then something's gone seriously wrong. We're talking like the Malik Willis style wrong like last year, because a lot of people thought Malik Willis would go back in the first round last year, and he fell to the third round. He was like the fourth QB taken, I think, so we could see a similar style drop, but I don't think he's that. I would take him with a second round pick. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I feel like Will Levis could be a success. He just has to be in the right situation. Someone like Seattle, Detroit, not the Raiders, the Saints, and Atlanta maybe for him would be great. Although Atlanta, the only problem is it's the same with the Colts and Anthony Richardson. Like I don't know if he can play this year, and you got Desmond Ridder in there. Like maybe Atlanta just wait and try and go aggressive for one of the two QBs next year. But I mean, like that pretty much sums up my thoughts on the first round. Some teams had great drafts. Some teams had not so great drafts, but ultimately, I think most of the teams in the league have smashed it. Really, just some other teams that off the top of my tongue that could have been the winners. I think again, like Carolina, obviously getting Bryce Young number 1 overall. You've got the Vikings getting Jordan Addison, another guy to sit next to Justin Jefferson, take attention away from him. Obviously losing Adam Thielen to Carolina in the offseason. You got your Adam Thielen replacement in there, and again because he's a rookie, he'll be there for a long time. So you got that, and you've got your KJ Osborne, you've got Jalen Reagor's in there, but those guys weren't gonna threaten defenses to the level that I think Jordan Addison out of USC can. What else? Just basically, you got the Chiefs. The Chiefs drafting Felix Adedike Uzama at the end of the first round last night. You're adding to George Karlaftis. Obviously, Frank Clark's gone now, but just adding another D lineman that can get you over the top because they know their offenses are so good that ultimately the 1 or 2 sacks that Adedike Uzama could get in the playoffs in the postseason could send the Chiefs to the Super Bowl again. So ultimately, for me, I like that pick. And again, they're just one of many teams that have won on draft night. As for players that are still available, my favourite player still available is Michael Mayer at Notre Dame, the tight end. If he goes beyond 40, I'll be shocked. I'm kind of hoping the Miami Dolphins do trade up for him because he's like a great scheme fit to go in Mike McDaniel's offense. Obviously, Will Levis is there. Joey Porter Jr., who I was shocked fell out the first round. I would love it if he went to the Steelers at 32. Obviously, going to his dad's team where his dad won a Super Bowl. If Mike Tomlin can do that, that'd be awesome. You got Brian Branch, the sort of nickel corner slash safety out of Alabama. He fell out the first round. There's uncertainty. He's like a Minka Fitzpatrick sort of thing, like his own sort of role. Like, can he actually play safety or not? That people are worried about that, I think. You got an interior lineman in Osiris Torrance out of Florida, who I think, again, I've seen many people mocked to, what the Bengals say at the back of the first round, but he fell out the first round. You got Dino Washington, who is like Marcellus Lewis 2. Like, he's like a massive athlete at tight end. If he can improve in the receiving game, like, he could genuinely be like an unstoppable tight end because he's so big. He's great in the run game. Like, if he can become a great receiver, then that's a great tight end for you to take. You've got Sam Laporta as well, who, again, I wouldn't mind the Miami taking at 52, or whatever the hell Dolphins pick. I think that'd be a great pick for Miami, just because he's got he's more of a receiving tight end, but he's played many sort of like outside zone scheme runs. I think I did the numbers. I think he's like one of the top 2 or 3 tight ends, that are properly good in this draft class. That has basically had the most sort of zone and gap scheme run blocking of it rather than just a gap scheme one. So for him, basically, he's not the best blocker, but he's not a Mike Gesicki blocker, if you know what I mean. So I think he'd be a great pick for the Dolphins. You got BJ Ojulari out of LSU, obviously the brother of Aziz, and then you got Hendon Hooker as well, who I think could go again very early, and I doubt he'd go past 48 in this draft. But no, that pretty much sums up my thoughts on the 2023 NFL draft, the first round. What a night it was, and again, a lot of teams got better. Like I didn't really know it was going to happen after after one, because like obviously Bryce Young wasn't going number one, but Houston really set the tone of the draft, and getting C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson, like, yes, I love it. I absolutely love what the Houston Texans did last night, and ultimately, on that note, I think they could be like an 8-win team potentially next year, 8-9 win team, because they've got some quite good talent on that team now. If C.J. Stroud comes in and hits the ball running like Brock Purdy did in that scheme last year, I'm not saying they're gonna, they might not even make the playoffs. I don't think they will do, but 8-9 wins potentially is a huge possibility for Houston. I think personally. But anyway, that's enough from me. I'm sure you'll want to watch the second and third round tonight. I've sort of previewed it up for you. I'm going to go put this podcast out now, but thank you for listening or watching if you're on YouTube. Little impromptu NFL draft podcast, and I'll be back next week to sort of recap the whole draft and preview the upcoming sort of rookie mini camps, training camp coming up now, because we after now we're really in the limbo of the NFL season now, because the teams are pretty much done. You're going to see some post-June first cuts, the likes of Byron Jones leaving Miami, for example. But ultimately, these are the rosters. After Saturday night, with when round 7 concludes, these are the teams that will go into next year, and I think it's time to go through them all. So that will be coming soon, maybe next week, maybe 2 weeks time. But have a little bit of a draft recap, and really look into who is a sleeper team for 2023 and beyond. But that's it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for following on. I know I'm rambling here, but yeah, be a great podcast, and bring on the second and third round of the draft. Bye.